This is the Content Marketing Podcast, episode number 49, Fun with Context and Incongruity. Hello and welcome to the Content Marketing Podcast. This is the show where we help you attract and retain business through the power of quality content. I'm your host, Rachel Parker of Resonance Content Marketing, and today is December 12th, 2013. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for episode number 49 of the Content Marketing Podcast. Just a reminder, we are live on iTunes and on Stitcher, so if you happen to be listening to this episode on the blog, you can click on over and subscribe. That means you'll get new episodes automatically delivered to your computer or your smartphone or your listening device of choice. And if you use a different app for your podcast listening pleasure, we also have an RSS feed, and I will provide that link in the blog post. In last week's podcast, we had a lovely chat with branding expert Jim Squires of Tickle Branding on the topic of what's in a name. So if you happen to miss that episode, feel free to click on over to iTunes or Stitcher or to the RSS feed and get all caught up. So that brings me to today's topic. Today we're talking about how you can add life to your content by having some fun with context, especially with a little trick called incongruity. I have to tell you that this week's episode was inspired by, of all things, a commercial. TV commercial. Now, you've probably heard me ranting on this podcast at some point or another about how 99% of all advertising is crap, and I still believe that, but this is a series that not only caught my attention the first time around, but actually causes me to stop fast-forwarding my DVR as I flip through the commercials, and I will actually stop to watch it. The campaign is by Sprint, the U.S. cellular and mobile provider, and it features two of the world's most celebrated actors of stage and screen. That is James Earl Jones and Sir Derek Jacobi. These are just renowned, award-winning actors whose voices have become just iconic. And the two of them are standing on a dark stage, on a theater stage, and they're wearing tuxedos. And when they open their mouths to speak, this is what you hear.
Ryan is a total hottie McHotterson.
Harvey, he's amazeballs. He's like the hottest hottie that ever hottied.
He's like a hottie times infinity plus another infinity. And his smile is totes adorbs.
Totes my goats. It's cray adorbs.
Totes my goats.
So we have two renowned, celebrated classical actors. We're seeing them in tuxedos on a stage, and we're expecting to hear something along the lines of, the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V. But instead, we hear the content of a text conversation between two teenage girls. Now, this is a perfect example of a word that you may have come across in your SAT prep courses many years ago, and that word is incongruity, and it's the state of things not belonging together. So in this case, the content that's being delivered, the words involved in this exchange between these two teenage girls is incongruous. It does not belong with the context in which it's presented, that is, being delivered by these two revered actors in tuxedos standing on a theater stage. And it's that incongruity that makes these ads so compelling. Now, had this content been delivered by two actual teenage girls, it might have been mildly amusing. You know, I might have chuckled at some of the slang, like totes my goats, that kind of thing. But the context of how it was presented is what makes it so compelling and so memorable. Sorry, I'm double-dogged here. I've got one on my lap and one right behind me. Anyway, another example of incongruity is what Virgin Airlines recently did with its in-flight safety video. Now, these are usually very dry presentations about how to buckle your seatbelt and where the exits are, etc. And it's a very serious subject. If something goes down on an airplane, no pun intended, you've got to know what to do. But Virgin, they are nothing if not progressive thinkers, and they have turned this presentation into a song and dance. And it's a fantastic video, and I'll play you a little snippet from it right here.
I got some safety tips that you gotta know, and trust me, it's something that you wanna hear. So honey, sip your lips and enjoy the show before we move into the stratosphere, yeah. So won't you buckle your seatbelt, pull it down tight, and keep your in that chair until we turn off that light. Turn your electrical devices off as fast as you can. And whatever you do, don't make me ask you again.
Of course, what we have here is another example of incongruity. Airline safety is, of course, a very serious issue, but they put it in a context that's fun and lighthearted, and that if you were a frequent flyer, you wouldn't mind seeing a couple hundred times a year, which would probably equal the number of times you have to fly. Just to cite another example, Monty Python, those guys were masters of incongruity. One sketch that comes to mind is the How Not to Be Seen sketch, and it's presented in the context of this very formal public service announcement of, these are the ways not to be seen. And I'm going to ask someone we're hiding 14 people in this picture, and I'm going to ask one of them to jump out, and he jumps out and is immediately shot. But the formality of that sketch is what makes it that much more funny and that much more compelling, and why we're talking about it years and years later. By the way, as a side note, John Cleese, after Monty Python broke up, he went on to co-found a company called Video Arts, which specialized in, of all things, making humorous training videos. So he, took the skills that he honed in Monty Python and took it into a more corporate environment. Interesting development. So at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, Parker, you taught us a big word and you showed us some examples. What the heck does this mean for all us content marketers? So here's my point. Incongruity is one of those tools in the content creator's toolbox that can really add some life to your content marketing program. So if you're feeling at a place where you're really feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you're doing the same stuff over and over again, or maybe you're in the situation where you have to communicate some content that's very dry, that's not inherently entertaining, what you can do is play with the context and see what happens. In other words, is there something you can do around, quote, the who, the when, the where, and the how that can make, quote, the what a little bit more compelling and a little bit more sticky? So just to take a goofy example, let's say you need to communicate some new regulatory requirements. What if you set up some kids with cue cards and had them read these regulations on camera? It's still the same regulations, but they're being read by a group of 5-year-olds who are trying to wrap their mouths around these big words. Another thing you could do, you could write a poem about these regulations, or maybe create a series of funny memes that communicate what you're trying to get across. The point is, by stepping outside the box with your context and introducing some incongruity, you can really breathe life into that content that seems at the moment less than fascinating, either because it's similar to what you've done before, or because it's inherently not the most fascinating thing on its own. So I hope all this made sense. I'm astounded by how often I say that, but I really hope all this made sense. If I totally confused you, or if you have something to add, please do drop me a line, and I will include that contact information at the end of the podcast. Now it's time for our content marketing tip of the week. For today's tip, I want to talk about calls to action and your contact information. Not the information itself, but where and how it's presented. So the point of content marketing is we want to be in front of our clients and prospects on a regular basis, so when that moment arrives that they happen to need our products or services, we are at the top of their minds. We're the first thing that they think of. So at that moment, when they decide they're ready to take that next step, you want to make it blatant blatantly obvious what that next step is and how they can get in touch with you. So make sure that your phone number, your email, and any other relevant contact information are front and center on everything you put out there, so that at that moment when a prospect is ready to take the next step in the sales funnel, whatever that may be, the information they need to get in touch with you is right there in front of them. So that goes for your website, your blog, your e-newsletter, your social media, as well as anything you might be doing in print. Anywhere you have a presence, make sure that that contact information is clear and easy to find. Okay, campers, that is it for me this week. Short and sweet podcast this time around. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Content Marketing Podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please feel free to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or via our RSS feed. And if you really like what you've heard, please leave us a quick review on iTunes. I would so appreciate it. For more information about content marketing, you're welcome to visit our blog at resonancecontent.com/blog, where you'll also find links to our pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social networks. If you'd like to email me a question to cover in our Tip of the Week section, you can contact me anytime at rachel@resonancecontent.com. And if you'd like for me to come... Sorry, there's a puppy melee going on. If you'd like for me to come speak about content marketing to your business or your organization, you can find out about my latest talk at contentmarketingspeaker.net. As always, I'd like to leave you with a quote, and today's is from a great man whom we lost very recently and will miss very dearly. That is Nelson Mandela. He once said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." Thank you, and rest in peace, Nelson Mandela. Again, this is Rachel Parker with Resonance Content Marketing, and we will see you again next week. Take care.